little bit. But okay, no sooner did I cut off than I broke that wood a little bit more, and I actually did manage to find a termite. I finally pulled off the right part of the bark that actually led me to where they are, and I squished out the guts of a soldier termite. And what we've got in here is some of the gut protists, the symbionts that I was looking for. These belong to a group I haven't talked about in lecture yet. They're called the excavata, and they are kind of jiggling around. And right there, there's that round thing that's kind of twitching back and forth. That's a termite gut symbiont. That's a small flagellate. I cannot clearly see what type of flagellate it might be. A common type that you do see in termites is in the genus Trichomonas, which is also one that is a human symbiont. There's one species that lives in human mouths, and there's one that lives in human vaginas. Trichomonas hominis and Trichomonas vaginalis, respectively. And there's some more right there, these little twitchy things. Whole bunch of little flagellates. If we look over, okay, I thought I saw, okay, there's another couple of little flagellates right there. It can be hard to tell the difference between purposeful movement and just Brownian motion. The random trajectories that little particles in water have just because they're being hit on at random by randomly moving water molecules. With a little practice, you can tell the difference. A lot of this twitching is just Brownian motion. I'm going to invoke a slightly lower power, but there's definitely some small flagellates in there. So yeah, you can see that area of motion right there. And up here, this might be, oh, it'd be cool. That would be cool. You can see there's a kind of pear-shaped critter that I'm trying to maneuver to put it in the dead center of the field. And if I can just get the blasted thing to focus. Okay, where'd it go? Okay, here we go. All right, okay, this bad boy is not moving very much, and I think he may be dying. They're usually more mobile than that. But if you look, right there's kind of his midsection, or hers, for all I really know. And if you look up here, that's the anterior end. And the anterior end ends in what looks kind of like a nose cone. It's not the same as the apical complex of an apicomplexan, but the anterior ends right there, and then sticking out all around it, you have lots of long flagella. This thing's got a hairdo kind of like I do at the moment. Lots of long flagella kind of coming out of that cone-shaped head and radiating out all around the body. And then about midway down, we have a nucleus. I've centered on the nucleus right now. And then back of the nucleus, the body is, you can see there's kind of hardened looking things in the back of that body. Those are actually wood fragments. This is either genus Trichonympha or close enough that I'm not counting. There's a lot of obscure genera in here, so I don't know that a specialist in termite symbionts would call this Trichonympha, but it's close enough. It's a Trichonympha-ish thing. You have that cone-shaped head surrounded by a ring of many very long flagella, if you can see those twitching back and forth. There again, down more or less in the midsection of the body, you can see a pretty large nucleus. And then back of that, the posterior end is kind of lump-shaped, and there's actually phagocytosed wood fragments in there. It's bacterial symbionts in the Trichonympha, in the termite, that do a lot of the work of breaking down the wood. Let me see if I can find just one more before we go. So there's a lower magnification of Trichonympha. The Trichonymphas that I've seen before tend to be fatter than this. They tend to be more pear-shaped. I've described them as looking like they shake when they laugh like a bowl full of jelly. They look a little bit like a hippie Santa. This one's a little bit more slender. I don't know if that means it's a different species or what. But, ooh, what are those? All right, we've got a couple of little elongated symbionts right there. And if I can get those in focus. Yeah. Okay, I've lost them. Give me a sec. Okay, right there, you can see these elongated things that are twitching and writhing just a little bit. In the termites that I used to look at, I used to do a lab that looked specifically at termite flora. And in the species that we usually looked at, if you saw an elongated symbiont like this, kind of spindle-shaped, it was likely to be in the genus Streptomastix. Now, since this is not a species I'm familiar with and it's been a long time, I don't absolutely know that that's what it is. But if you called it that, I certainly wouldn't mark you wrong. Where's the? Here we go. Yeah, there's a pair of them. Okay, that pattern of dots that's popping up is actually in the camera itself, and I think it might be condensation appearing. And it is kind of getting in the way of our ability to see. But there we go, over to the left. If I focus up and down, you can see they're actually in kind of a spiral shape. I can see a nucleus kind of in the midline. It's hard for me to focus, to get in good focus on all of them. And my attempts to fiddle with the lighting, I think, are mostly making the condensation on the camera lens worse. But, oh well, we will do what we may. So there, yeah, those elongated protists with a bit of a spiral groove to them are what I learned to call Streptomastix way back when, although they could be a separate genus. But you can reliably expect to see at least 2 or 3 different genera of termite guts, or termite gut symbionts. If they're round and twitchy, not unlike this one, kind of in the middle. They are probably Trichomonas or a relative. If they're comparatively large and fat and jolly looking, they would be Trichonympha. narrow and kind of spirally looking. They'd be streptomastics, and there could well be others. There's a whole diverse biota of termite gut protists, different symbionts in different species of termites. So it's a think of this as looking for video game Easter eggs in nature. You really don't know what you're going to get. Biology is like a box of chocolates, as somebody said. Okay, the schmutz on the camera lens is getting in the way of my ability to see what I'm looking at, although I think I can. The twitchy things right there are clearly symbionts, but I'm not getting good enough pictures to really say much about them. But there you can see them at lower magnification, and you might see these really long things are probably symbiotic bacteria. There's lots of those in a termite gut. I used to see at high magnification, you can spot spirochete bacteria. They just look like little, wiggly sine waves inside your termite gut. As Justin Bieber said, your body is a wonderland, and I'm pretty sure he was referring to termite guts when he said that. Obviously, of course. Okay, there's something else right there. So you will see things like this if you happen to get some rotting wood and you squish out a termite gut. You'll see different things if you get a cockroach. One thing you'll see a lot of in cockroaches is this group called gregarines. If you get a fly, you could see gregarines, but in the case of a fly, if you get the foregut, meaning you pull off the head and kind of squish the gut that comes off with the head, there's a ghost of a chance you could spot little very long, narrow flagellates that are related to this thing called trypanosoma that causes African sleeping sickness. That doesn't always work. When I've tried it, only about 10% of flies have that, but it's at least a possibility. Ooh, there's another symbiont of some kind. If you get a roach, you'll often see Nyctothyrus, a very large brown ciliate. That's another symbiont. In crickets, when I've done them, what I mostly saw were gregarines, but they were certainly present. We had plenty of gregarines in the mealworms that we got at the pet store, and we got gregarines in those aquatic insects that we picked up. So yeah, the gut biota of insects is a complete grab bag. You really don't know what you're going to find, and it's something worth exploring. And it's easy to do with a microscope. The saline is easy to make. Remember, a cup of tap water and a quarter teaspoon of salt, pinch of baking soda if you have it, and you're good to go. And it seems to work pretty well. So that's what I want you to do. Get some bugs, squish out their guts, make a note of what kind of bugs they are. You don't have to identify them to species, but hopefully you know the difference between roach and cricket and dragonfly and things like that. You can commercially buy some if you want to, and you have them on hand. But I hope that at least some of you folks will go out and try to catch something wild and just see what's there. And as I've said in the handout that I'm going to post this afternoon, I'll include pictures of the most common types of symbiont that you might see. But there's not an awful lot of people studying these things. You could easily end up seeing something that nobody's ever seen before. And for this lab, I guess there isn't really a formal hypothesis that we're testing, but I would like you to at least make some observations on what you see crawling around in the guts of different bugs. And maybe we can compile everything together, and then we'll have a compilation of things that are crawling around in the guts of bugs. Because, why not? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.